Anime is weird is a term that you have most likely heard. Now, to more cultured individuals who are actually a part of the anime community who partake in the medium, you'd know that anime is really weird. Now, that's not to say that there are a lot that don't have those traits associated with why anime is weird. There's plenty of them out there that not only don't have it, but are also considered some of the best. These are the safe bets. It shows you could recommend with a smile knowing you're about to put these guys onto peak. Some examples are Attack on Titan, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Frieren. These anime are safe bets. Now, truth be told, there are some, actually a lot, of anime people would consider weird. These are shows you'd maybe not want to recommend at first, whether it be a harem or an isekai. Some of these you'd want to hold off for a bit. And then we get into the Monogatari series. The Monogatari series is an anime that indeed exists. If I had to describe to me what this show is, the most accurate description I could give is that basically, whenever I'm watching this show, it's the equivalent of me being in my old high school physics class. I have no idea what the fuck is going on. This series is a mess. It's all over the place. Everything is cryptic and metaphorical. No, genuinely, people never just say, yeah, I'm good. It has to be a whole riddle on coming to the conclusion that this character is actually good. The main character is questionable, the animation is so unique and different, but with that being said, I love this series to death. It's got an amazing story, has one of the best cast of characters in anime, and it's just such an interesting series to follow. The series follows our protagonist Koyomi Araragi in his journey through helping girls overcome supernatural oddities. Basically, these oddities are supernatural occurrences that serve as a metaphor for the emotional and psychological issues a character is going through. An early example of this would be Senjigahara Atagi, who was affected by the heavy crab that stole her weight, essentially making her almost weightless. Due to childhood trauma, the crab took her physical and emotional weight to work as a coping mechanism for her trauma and burdens she wasn't able to handle. Yeah, these are the type of issues Araragi is dealing with on a constant basis, and the series goes into depth with all the other girls who are suffering from these oddities. So yeah, despite how much I love this series, it is extremely hard to recommend. There's just too many factors going into it that makes this series questionable or hard to watch. And we are going to go over them. Wow, it's almost as if that was the whole point of the video. And what a better way to start this jumble of convoluted mess of metaphors and allegations with the watch order. One thing that's great about anime is that you can start with episode 1 and go from there. Yeah, you can't do that with the Monogatari series. The series is a collection of different shows that kind of form a coherent story. So not only do you have to search up what series you have to watch, you need to find out what order to watch them in. Now, once you actually do it, you'll find that it's not the hardest thing in the world, it's just a bit inconvenient. It's by no means anything like the Fate series, which is actually impossible to properly start, but it is a bit of a hassle. The funny thing is, that's not the issue. The issue is that if you want to watch it in the broadcast order, going by release order, then you have to prepare yourself for the fact that nothing is in order. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look into the series. So the first series to come out is Bakemonogatari all the way back in 2009. And after that is Nisemonogatari, which came out in 2012 and takes place after Bakemonogatari. So no issues so far. Then we get into Nekomonogatari Black, which also came out in 2012 and takes place before both Bakemonogatari and Nisemonogatari. And the events of this show are spoken about in Bakemonogatari despite Nekomonogatari Black being released after the last two shows. Now, skipping 5 series, that takes us to the Kizumonogatari trilogy that came out from 2016 to 2017, which just so happens to take place before everything that's been shown so far in the series and is technically the true beginning to the story. And if you're thinking, that's not that bad, at least the shows themselves follow a coherent story timeline, right? No. So going back a bit, the Monogatari series second season, the 4th installment, has multiple arcs in this series that have arcs that have either already happened and get referenced in previous arcs, or even have arcs that are occurring simultaneously as another arc, while also having different installments also having taken place before certain arcs and are referenced as well, making it extremely hard to tell which arc is taking place before or after another arc, making it an absolute mess of a timeline. So then a question that might have popped up is, why don't you just watch it in chronological order? Yeah, it's hard to describe, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you truly want to give this series a shot, then I'd say watch the release order, with maybe the exception of watching the Kizumonogatari trilogy after Bakemonogatari. Mainly because you're missing out on a certain charm watching it in the broadcast order gives. Choosing to watch it in chronological order sort of ruins the experience. It's hard to explain, but I'll at least try and give an answer. Look, the watch order might be too convoluted, and I'm sure just hearing all this makes you want to throw away the thought of watching the series, but just know that it sounds worse than it actually is. Most of the time, you won't even know what characters are referencing until you actually get into the arc that was referenced. So while it is confusing, it's also a cool factor that the series has, and it's probably the best way I can describe why it's a bad idea to watch it in chronological order. Another factor that makes it very hard to recommend is that while there are action scenes, and very beautiful ones might I add, they're very few and far between simply because that's not the driving force for why people consume the Monogatari series. This series is 100% a character study into so many different people, and from the description I gave about Senjukahara, who might I add is just one character, it's very easy to tell that they really go in depth into the specific person the arcs focus on. And the main way they do this is through dialogue. The Monogatari novel series is very unique in the sense that most of it is dialogue, and when I mean most of it, I really mean it. It's so dialogue heavy that the series has been estimated to be 85% of characters talking or internal monologues. And I recognize that many people aren't too interested in dialogue heavy series, let alone one that has 85% of it covering the whole story. And naturally the anime follows through with how the novel is. And because of how much content there is, the characters can sometimes speak at light speed, making it very hard to follow what they're saying sometimes, and it also makes it very easy to miss very important details that are spoken through dialogue. Everything's very quick because the characters are always bouncing off each other. Before you can even process what someone said, the other is already responding. On the bright side, it makes the series endlessly rewatchable, but that as well could be a negative for some who just want to consume something once without having to worry about missing anything too important. To add salt to the wound, because of how metaphorical the series is, that also means most of the dialogue is riddled with so much nuance that are sometimes very hard to understand on first watch. So not only do you have a series that's 90% dialogue, but most of it is pretty hard to understand. And for most people who just want something to entertain them, trying to sell them on the fact that most of the series is characters talking and a lot of it is pretty confusing makes it really hard to be invested in something you don't understand. That means that 9 times out of 10 they wouldn't want to watch it. And because of this aspect, it's famous for being an elitist show where people who are pretty pretentious put it on a pedestal as one of the greatest shows in all of anime, and anyone who disagrees is an unintelligent person who should stick to something like Solo Leveling. And while they aren't wrong, it is one of the greatest anime of all time, but it's also completely understandable why someone wouldn't like this series. However, I 100% have a part of me that's pretentious, and I love how deep and complex this series is. You know what? On second thought, maybe I'm worse than a pretentious person because at least they accept who they are. Maybe I'm just in the closet or something. Whether it's the homosexual closet or the pretentious closet is yet to be decided. It's definitely the first. Another factor, and probably the worst one, is the main character. See, me telling people that Araragi is one of my favorite characters isn't that easy. It's the equivalent of when you're doing an English test and the question's worth 6 marks. And the reason that is because Araragi is kinda, somewhat, maybe... Okay, no, he's definitely an EDP. So I can't just say Araragi is one of my favorite characters in anime. I have to say something like, okay, Araragi is one of my favorite characters in anime, but he's an EDP, and that by no means means I agree with or like this aspect behind his character. I think it's a very bad flaw he has, and the reason I like his character is because he's so interesting and the perfect protagonist for the series, even though he's an EDP. And I by no means defend his actions. Okay, so why is he interesting? Well, putting aside this for a second, it's hard to believe to someone who's not watched this series, but Araragi is one of, if not the most selfless person ever. I'm not exaggerating, this guy will literally help anyone at the cost of his own life. Hell, this exact thing happens in Kizumonogatari where he meets Shinobu for the first time. Araragi comes across a vampire that's lived hundreds of years and decides to give her his life simply because she was dying. Keep in mind, this isn't a close relative or someone he's close with. He's never met her before. She's a stranger to him, and not only that, but this woman's a fucking vampire. Now, of course, there are reasons as to why Araragi decided to save her, but it all comes down to his character. His character development through the series, all the monologues we get from him, it's so interesting, and from a series that really dives deep into the different characters' struggles and makes you understand who they are, Araragi is no exception to this. He's by far one of the most interesting characters I've ever had the pleasure of watching. His dynamic with every character is such a highlight and so vastly good that it never gets old. Now, despite everything I've said, to a lot of people it doesn't matter, because he's an EDP. Okay, so I've gone over how hard it is to recommend this series. It's hard to keep track of, its story is convoluted and all over the place, and also the main character Araragi is problematic. So now I'll do the impossible and recommend the Monogatari series. If you're still watching this video, then you are one of 2 people. Either you're a fan of the series and casually watching a video about an anime you like, which in that case, hey, how's it going? Love your taste in anime. Or you haven't watched the series, but you're curious. For some reason, despite everything I've said, you're still here. And it is my duty to those who are interested in getting into Peak that I try my damn best to recommend this series. First and foremost, the animation is both unique and stunning at the same time. Despite most of the series being dialogue, there's usually a lot going on that makes it visually beautiful to look at. The backgrounds feel so immersive and almost fantastical that it's hard to take your eyes off them. It feels so atmospheric and adds so much to the context of what these characters are talking about. Whenever most people think of dialogue in a series, it usually goes, camera cuts to someone talking, talking, and then camera cuts to other person talking. And that's not a problem for me, however a lot of people aren't here for dialogue. So the series is like, let's make it mostly dialogue but also try and make it as entertaining to watch as possible through visuals. And then when we do get action scenes, they're so beautifully animated. I always hear, oh, this show has the best animation, or I'll hear, no, this show has the best animation. But I'll never hear people ever bringing up this show. And it fucking should be in the discussion because look at this shit. My second point is that every single character in this show is interesting. It has one of the best casts in all of anime. As I've said before, they really go into all these characters, making them as nuanced and fleshed out as they possibly can. If you're the type of person who loves characters, then you will love this show. For a series that takes so much time and effort to make every single character a complex puzzle piece, it really adds to the vibe that the Monogatari series is going for. And it's not as if once you see their arc, they become irrelevant. All of them are always growing throughout the series. It's got an interesting plot mixing in Japanese mythology and adding its own spin through the oddities. And for a series that has all these unique characters placed into one story, the plot as well is just as interesting. And finally, you won't ever experience something like this ever again. This show is one of a kind. It's something so unique, I don't think it's possible for someone to recreate it. The creator of the Monogatari series, Nishio Isin, fuck, even his name is hard to say. This guy is a literacy genius. To successfully pull off what he did, making a series that's this close to perfection with a cast that has no right being this good, there's only one explanation. He's a fucking genius. There are so many anime out there that take inspiration from each other, and it's a given that artists create art and that in turn inspires other artists. But the Monogatari series is different. While it was most likely inspired by Japanese culture, it was 100% not inspired by any anime that's ever come out. And it's not as if you could just create something like the Monogatari series. There will never be another anime like it. The title of this video is The Monogatari Series is Impossible to Recommend. However, I think it's a series everyone should recommend despite that. This series deserves more love. It's honestly insane how good it is. Please, if you haven't seen it, then go watch it. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you're new here, subscribing would mean a lot. I love this series to death, and it's a shame just how hard it is to recommend the masterpiece that is the Monogatari series, but hopefully some of you are intrigued enough to give it a shot. I should probably mention it's impossible to watch the whole thing legally, so do with that information what you will. But anyways, that's all I have to say for now. See ya.